thank you everybody for coming to the second webinar in our Dive into Data webinar series put on here by the Gordon Foundation. So our webinar today is DataStream online training, and it's going to be with me, Patrick. I'm a data specialist here with the Gordon Foundation working on DataStream. Seeing some of the names, I think maybe some of you have worked with or met before, but there's also a lot of new names. So I'm really excited to get you guys acquainted with the system. So just a little bit about us. So the Gordon Foundation is a 55-year-old charitable organization based out of Toronto, Ontario. And we kind of have two major focuses. One is our Northern program, which works on Northern issues in Canada, and the other is our water program. So DataStream is the main initiative of our water program. We work currently in 3 different regions across Canada, in the Mackenzie River Basin, in partnership with the government of the Northwest Territories, in Atlantic Canada with the Atlantic Water Network, and in Lake Winnipeg Basin with the Lake Winnipeg Foundation. So our Dive into Data webinar series was kind of created with the idea of the chance for us to share some of the best practices and knowledge we've gained over our work in developing DataStream. So our first one was on data management best practices. The recording for that is available if you guys want to go back and watch that. And we wanted to be able to, use this knowledge that we've gained through this process to help increase open data and open data capacity nationally within Canada. The future of open data really is now. We're seeing a big push to it. The federal government has an open by default policy now where they're sharing a lot more information. And we're seeing provincial governments also with a lot of data sharing platforms across Canada. So we want to kind of help foster this and continue some of the great work done by other organizations. And we understand that by having well-managed and easily accessible data, we'll be able to have stronger science and better informed decisions to, better manage our water resources in Canada, which is such an important resource. So with that being said, a quick overview of today's webinar. I'm just going to give you guys a quick review of the site, some of the features that you might not know about and different areas on the site you can go to. Talk about some of our mapping and visualization features that you can use on DataStream to access the data. Then we're going to talk about how to upload data to DataStream, and then go over a quick formatting 101. So how to format your data to make sure it works in the DataStream format. So before we get into all that though, we're going to throw out a quick poll here just to see how familiar everybody is with the DataStream platform. So poll will pop up. I'll give you guys a little bit of time here to vote on it. So yeah, just very simply, how familiar are you guys with the DataStream platform? Are you new? Have you never seen it before? Or are you an old pro and you've been using it, for the last number of years? So throw in some votes and we'll see where everybody is at right now. Okay, sweet. So it looks like we've got almost everybody in there voted. So let's see where we are at. So it looks like we're a lot of new faces, which is really awesome to see. A lot of people and then, a good amount of people who are somewhat familiar. So hopefully, for the people who aren't familiar, this will be a lot of learning experience for you. And I'm really excited to be able to show you guys that great platform we have. And hopefully to some of you people who are more familiar, we can show you a few things that maybe you didn't know about or knew existed in the site. Okay, so with that being said, let's jump over to DataStream. Give it a minute here just to make sure the screen is sharing. Okay, awesome. So yeah, so this is Atlantic DataStream, one of our 3 hubs. This is the one in Atlantic Canada. So each hub has its own site. So we've got atlanticdatastream.ca, Lake Winnipeg DataStream, and then our 3rd hub is the Mackenzie DataStream. So we're going to be doing stuff on the Mackenzie DataStream site here today. All the sites have the same look and feel. It's mostly just which kind of region is shown on the map and some of the kind of branding just to really, get people involved in their community and share some of the community stories. So with McKinsey DataStream, on the homepage here, this Explorer data is kind of the main part of the site. That's how you get in to view the map and to start exploring some of the data. We'll get into that in a second. That's kind of the second part. But some other features that we do have on the site that you might not be familiar with. We have our news section here. This is where we post stories about different community groups and the work they're doing, but also different press releases and work that we're doing as well. So it's a good spot to keep up to date with what DataStream's up to. About page, if you want to get to know more about us or the communities work with. We also have some frequently asked questions. And then we also have our resources page here, which has resources not only on DataStream and tools you can use to upload your data to DataStream, but also has some information on, water quality monitoring and just open data in general to just learn a bit more about these things. You can also contact us here and obviously to log in. Also on the home page here, these are kind of the newest stories you can check out. We also have this counter, which outlines the how many monitoring groups, measurements, and sites are in each hub region. Across all 3 regions, we currently have just over 3 million data observations in over 80 groups that we work with. So this is just kind of gives you a little snapshot. And then at the bottom here, we have our footer. Some features here just to note, if you want to get more information about the terms of use, so what it means to use DataStream and share your data here, you can visit there. We also have our data policy if you want to know more about our data sharing policy. And you can also connect with us by signing up for our newsletter. This is a great way to get updates. We also are looking for feedback all the time. The platform's constantly growing. This isn't something we designed and have stagnant here. We have staff full-time that are looking at building new features and adding new options to the site. So we're always looking for feedback and want to make this the best tool for you guys as possible. We also have our office hours here. So you can visit and see when our next office hours are. That's kind of a monthly hour that we host where people can come on and ask any questions they want about DataStream, and we'll help them out as best we can. So with that being said, we'll jump into kind of the main part of the site here, and this is the map. So our map for each region, each hub that you go into, you'll notice that the sites are filtered by whichever hub you're in. So you'll see the rest of Canada is grayed out, but this hub region shows the data that's available in this hub. We are currently looking at adding new hubs and expanding, and we do accept data that does exist outside of these hubs. But for accessing it via the map, these are kind of the 3 main ways you can access it through each of these hubs right now. So while on here, you'll notice these different bubbles with numbers. So each of these numbers represents how many points are within that location. So as I get closer, the bubbles will begin to spread out, and we'll start to actually get an idea of where these different points are. We can see, which areas have a lot of data, and where, if we're interested in a region, we can go in there and see who's monitoring. You can scroll in and out to do that. We also use these tools here. We also provide a number of mapping layers. So we have access to the subwater basins, the larger watersheds, settled land claims, as well as Canadian historical treaties. And we're adding to these layers all the time. As well, if you're zoomed in really close on an area and you kind of get a little lost, or you want to get back, you can just click this arrow here and it'll zoom you back to the full map. You can also search the site over here through the search bar. As well, through this drop down, you can filter by different things. So one is filtering by organizations. If you click on this, it'll give you a list of all the different organizations within that region, and you can use that to filter what data sets exist. So if we click on for like Management Society, it's going to just show us the kind of 2 data sets that exist with there. Shows that they've been updated recently, and you can go in and view it through there. You can also filter by characteristics as well as region. So if you want to just look at the data from different provinces, land claims, basins, or subbasins. So that's kind of the main part of the map. It's a big part of DataStream is our map-based search. You use the map to access the data. We see a really big connection between the geographic location of where the samples were collected and the information itself. So if you go in and you kind of find an area you're interested in, let's say I want to take a look at this point, Wrigley at Mackenzie River, click on the point. It's going to give me the name of the location, the coordinates, and as well, it'll list the data sets that exist there. So in this case, there's only one data set at that point, but some points have multiple data sets as multiple different groups are monitoring at the same site, or there might have been, multiple different programs at that one site. So if we click on the data set name, it's going to open us into the data visualization page, which is where you can visualize the data. So we'll be able to do some maps, some graphing, as well as dive deeper into what actually is there to see what data we're looking at. So when we open it, it's going to first show us for this data set, it's going to pre-select the site we're looking at here at Wrigley at Mackenzie River, and it's going to graph some of the data. So in this case, it's graphing our temperature data. Now, if we want to, we can, using the different locations on the left, we can click on these locations and add them to the map. And then this allows us to do a cross comparison of the different data points. But sometimes the names maybe aren't exactly what you're looking for, and you really want to compare sites that are similar. You can use this button down here or hit map up in the top right. And this is going to take you back to the map with just the sites in this data set selected. And you can start to look and say, okay, I want to compare this site and maybe this site because they're near each other. You just add to repair, compare, and then I don't want this site, it's way out there, so I can click on that site and remove it. So now if I've selected the sites that I'm interested in and I go back to the visualization, now just the sites that I've added or removed are now selected, and then I can view just the data I want to. Also with this data, when you've got this kind of cross, you can zoom in and it'll let you, get closer so you can really start to see, some of these trends and get a better idea of what's going on. Then if you hit this button, it'll zoom you kind of back out. You can also change the date range. So the dataset date range here isn't changeable. That's just telling you what data exists. But if you want, you can go in here, change to, let's say, 2017, and then it'll just show me the data from this dataset range. And if I want to go back, I just say, okay, October 10th, 2018, and then I can see all the data again. So also in the graph, we can change which parameters we're looking at. So in DataStream, we currently accept over 5,000 different parameters. So there's a lot of different options. So this data set has a lot of different variables they collect. You'll notice that some of them are in here twice, for example, aluminum. So what it does is it tells you the characteristic, the result sample fraction that was used to sample it, and then as well as the units. Some other things that it lists, it'll tell you guidelines. So whether or not that sample has a guideline that's associated with it, whether it be a national guideline or a regional guideline, as well as it'll tell you if it was a field sample. So for example, we have two different pHs here. One says field, one doesn't. So now we can see, okay, sweet, this is the field pH, that's what I'm interested in, or you can just look at the lab pH. So if we click on something, let's take, for example, zinc. We have all our zinc data. You'll notice here at the bottom, these arrows that are pointing down. So this means that these were below detection limits. So that's how we graph the below detection limit values. So we can clearly see those versus the circles, which are your actual values. So if we go to something, let's say like pH, we can also, when we go to ones that have guidelines, the guidelines will select. So here we see the CCME, which is the Canadian Council of Ministers of the Environment. Their guidelines for freshwater for pH, so 9 and 6.5. So we can see for these sites, oh, our pH is in the right range. That's really great. We can toggle those on and off here. And we also have the US EPA, which is the United States Environmental Protection Agency. We have their guidelines as well for freshwater, as well as for marine, if the data set exists in the marine environment. You can also change your chart type. So we have scatter, line, bar, and box plots. The box plots are a feature. One of those features I don't know if a lot of people are familiar with, but I think it's really useful, especially if you're looking to do some quality control and assess the quality of your data, because you'll get these little outliers, and you can start to look at the outliers and say, okay, why is this an outlier? Was that meant to be in our data? And you can kind of delve into it there. For all of these, you can also come over here and download the plot as a PNG file. So if you create a plot on here that you like and you want to use it in a report, you can download it via that as well, which is super helpful. You can also add your percentiles. So if you're interested in seeing, what some of your averages are and percentiles for your data, you can go in and do that as well. We also provide those statistics though as well in a statistics tab. So the statistics tab does a little bit of a breakdown for the parameter, for the parameter and the sites that you've selected. And then you can download the statistics page if you wanna take those statistics yourself and do other work with them. We've also, a newer feature we've added is this Science Explainer. We're just releasing them right now. They're not currently live, but we're planning on adding them so that you can get some more context for the parameters that you're looking at. So somebody's looking at pH to understand, what pH is and why it matters. This explainer page will kind of give you that outline. You can also get a preview of the data set. So this will show you the different columns and kind of what the data looks like. And you can download the data set from there. But you can also download the data set over here on the left as well. So if you hit the download button, it's gonna give you a little pop-up modal here that breaks down first what versions exist of the data set. So this data set only has one version, but if people had been adding data to it or had made any changes to the data, those get saved, and then it'll tell you what those are. And if you go to the view changelog, you can see what those changes are. So in this case, they just made one, but some data sets we have, they're on version 3 or 4 because they've made some changes. So that's all saved. We also have blockchain here. So a green check mark means that the data hasn't been tampered with and it's the same as the original data that's been uploaded. So you just agree to the terms and then you can download the data here. You don't need to sign in or have an account or anything to download it, and it's free to download. We also allow people to add attachments. So you can add attachments for maybe what your sampling protocols are. So if somebody else comes to the data set and wants to know how it was sampled and gets more information, that can be added. This can also accept any reports maybe that you do, summarizing that data. If you do a yearly report, you can put the raw data and the report up here. We also accept photos if you have photos as well of the sites and you want to add them. And the last part here is the data license. So this is really important. The data license shows how people can use your data. The two options we provide are attribution license, which means that the data has to be attributed to you, which means somebody has to cite you, as well as open commons, which means that it's just open. We also allow underneath here people to add additional data disclaimers. So if you want to use the attribution license, but there's some more information you feel is important to the licensing of your data, you can add that in here as well. In addition to the data licensing, we also provide this metadata. So what the metadata does is it gives the kind of who, why, and how of the data. So, it gives you some information on who collected it, who to contact if you have any questions, why they collected it, it's just more information about the data set. We also provide this DOI tool. So a DOI is a digital object identifier. Basically what it is it's a persistent link that exists online. So if people go to that, the data will always exist there. So if we open that up, see what this looks like. It's going to be this page, which tells you the name of the data set. You can come in here and map it, download it. All of the metadata is included here as well as some alternate formats for the metadata if you're looking for it in a different format, and as well as at the bottom here, the different versions. So this is really useful for citing. If somebody wants to cite your data or use it in any kind of literature, they can use this DOI as in the citation process to make sure it has a good link back to it. So that's kind of the overview of the mapping and visualization process. This is where, I guess, for those of you that haven't uploaded data to DataStream, this is where you're looking to get to. And these are kind of the features that you get by putting your data onto DataStream. And as I mentioned earlier, we're always looking to add new features and build on the site. So with that being said, we've got a second poll here to throw out before we move into the next section, which is on the uploading of DataStream. So we're just gonna put this next poll out just to get a better idea of who's uploaded to DataStream and who is new to the process. So I'm just gonna give everybody a few moments there. So yeah, have you uploaded data to DataStream before? If you have, if you could just let us know which hub you upload to, or if not, if you could let us know if you are interested in uploading to DataStream, and if you are interested, we'd be really happy to help you guys through that process. Okay, thanks for the heads up there, Andrew, that you have to answer all 3 questions. So if you can't submit, you have to answer all 3 questions, unfortunately. Yeah, that may skew our results. So for number 2, if you haven't uploaded DataStream, maybe click which region you would be interested in uploading your data to if you did. Okay, so the results may be a little skewed, but we'll get if everybody's just finishing up. Okay, so we'll look at some of these results. So it looks like a lot of people haven't uploaded their data to DataStream yet. That's really great to hear. A lot of new people we can get on board. A lot of people in the Mackenzie region, so really happy to see that. It's a really important region. And are people interested? Yes, most people are, which is fantastic. So I'm really excited to get to work with hopefully some of you people, or some people already have uploaded it and then voted for that one as well. Okay, cool. So now we'll move on to the uploading process. Okay, so back to the home page. So when you want to upload data to DataStream, the first thing you need to do is to set up an account. So if you just go up here to log in, and mine's already set up, but if you just, this is what you'll see, you just hit sign up, fill in your information, then send us a message and let us know, and we'll grant you access to allow you to upload data to DataStream. I already have an account, so I'm just gonna log in. So once you log into DataStream, after getting data steward access, you're gonna notice this new tab at the top called Upload Data. So this is where you'll go to input your data to DataStream. So if you click on Upload Data, you're gonna get a list here of all of the data sets that exist under your site. So for me, I've got these 2 here. If this is your first time, this will be blank. This is also where you can download the upload templates. So these are the templates you use to upload your data. We'll go over those in a second. But you can also get them as well over here on our resources tab as well. So if you go to the resources tab, you'll see upload guidance. This is where you can get the upload tab, the step-by-step instructions to upload your data, as well as the metadata form. And some other resources, as I mentioned before, around water monitoring, on open data, and indigenous and community-based monitoring. So if you're looking to add your first data set, you go in here and you click on Add New Data. And then, as with many of these sites, there's a terms of use page, so you can read this to understand what it means to use DataStream and put your data online. If you agree to them, just hit Agree to Terms, hit Next. Now this is where you're going to upload your data set in a CSV file. So once your data is all formatted, it's in a CSV file. You're just going to quickly grab your data set here, and then just click and drag it in. And then it's going to look at your data set, make sure it meets all the requirements. If it doesn't meet some of the requirements and something is wrong with it, it'll kick back one of these errors at the bottom. So for example, this one's saying that I'm missing a result sample fraction in all of my rows. You can hit on this download full error list, and it'll actually download a CSV that outlines all of your errors and all of the columns that it affects, and that'll allow you to go in and fix it. So once you've gone in and you fixed all the mistakes and it looks good to go, you can drag it in again, and it'll just pass when it gets a success. Next is inputting your program information. So this is just some basic, what program you're doing and some information about that program. So if you have one that previously exists, you can add a lot of data to it. But if you have a new one, you just hit add new program, add a new program here. So I'll just put webinar test, just test, hit next. And once you've added this program, then it's going to take you to the metadata page. So this metadata page, the dataset name is already pre-selected. The dataset name is chosen from the dataset name inside of the data that you uploaded. Then you just fill in this metadata information, which there's a metadata form available on the resources page that just kind of walks you through how to input this. Some basic stuff, who to contact, the abstract of the dataset, who collected, who uploaded it. This citation here, if you have a citation you want people to use, you can put it in. But if you leave it blank, we actually auto fill in so people know what citation to use. And our citation format is based off of the Chicago data author style. This is also now where you pick your licensing. So attribution license, as I meant before, it gives you some information on what that means. And if you want the full legal text, it's here. And same with the public domain license. There's also these info bubbles. So if you go over them, it'll tell you just a bit more information about these sections. So you can kind of see. You'll see too also some of these are required and some of them are optional. As well, the DOI section down here. If you have a DOI that already exists for that data set, let's say it exists somewhere else and you're cross-populating it, you can add that here. But if you don't have one, leave it blank and we'll create one for you. So once you've filled in all this information, so I'm just gonna fill in some random information here. You hit next. And I forgot to pick my data license. So if you don't pick one of your things, it'll kick you back to the top and let you know that you're missing something. Hit next, and now it's gonna go through this uploading process. So this process just takes your data, combines it all together, makes sure all the columns are in the right section, and then adds it to your other data set. So once this whole process is completed, I'm gonna back out. Your data set, if you go back, will look like this. Once that process is completed, you'll get this yellow hourglass, and that means your data set is in preview. So what the preview section looks like, if you go to a preview data set, is it allows you to actually look at your data set before it's published to make sure it's what you want to put out there. So this is where you can do some of those things like the box plots. You can look at the names to make sure they're all the same. Make sure your dates are good over here. Go to your location, make sure that location makes sense. And once you've looked it all through and you go, okay, sweet, this looks like what I want to upload, this is correct, the statistics make sense, then you can approve the data set. And once you hit approve, then the data set becomes published. Before that though, the data set is only visible to you on the account. Now, if you did find any mistakes and you said, oh, this actually isn't what I wanted to do, this is wrong, you can hit reject changes and it'll reject whatever you just did and roll the data set back. If it's your first time uploading, it'll delete and you just have to go back through the metadata stage again. If you are adding data to a data set, it'll just go back to the previous version. You can also skip the preview. So let's say you are have a field tech or you are a field tech and you put the there we go. Yeah, so sorry about that. I just got muted. If you are a field tech or something, you can actually go in and input the data, and then you could send it to a supervisor to review and then approve it. So that's the upload process for a new data set. But we also have a couple other features that once you have a data set on DataStream, you can do to add to that data. So if this is my data set that I've already added, I can go in here to update data set. Again, accept the terms of use. And now I have these three options. So the first one is add new data. what add new data does is it allows you to add additional rows and append them or add them to the bottom of your existing data set. So if I went out this field season and I recorded a bunch of data, I could add that to DataStream, and then next season record all my next data and then add that to DataStream, and it would build on this data set. And each addition gets a new version number. So when you do an addition, you get another 0.1. So if you did your first upload, it would be 1. An addition would be 1.1, 1.2, and then you can add in the change log what you've done each of those times so people can follow those changes. The big thing here is you only want to add the new observations because it just takes that file and adds it to the bottom of your existing data set. The next is modify existing data set. So this is if you have, you've gone through and you've maybe added some data, but then you've realized, oh, there's a mistake in the data, or I want to change something. I noticed, one of the names or locations was wrong. What you can do here is download the data set, go in, make that change, and then re-upload it. And what this does is it replaces all of the data set, all of the previous existing data set with the new data set you're uploading. So it does a full replace of the two data sets. You can also use this as well if you have a data set in-house and you're constantly building on it and you just want to replace each time. That's also possible. And what this does is it changes the first number. So your version would go here from 1 to 2. So if it was 1.1, then it would go to 2.0. The reason for that is it's a major change, and we want people to really be aware, oh, I'm using this old version of the data. I should probably update it to this newer version because something's been changed. Finally, you can also just edit your metadata. So if you realize, your abstract, you want to add some more information or change your contact email, you can go in and just quickly do that here. So that is the upload kind of process. If you go to the resources page, the upload guide here walks you through step-by-step how all of those things work. So with that being said, before we go to the next section, if anybody has any questions, please feel free to add them in Q&A or put them in the chat. But we're also going to do another poll. Similar to the last one, you have to answer everything. So there is an if yes, but just answer both of them because you're going to need to answer both of them to submit it. So I'm going to put the poll out here. And this is basically, we just want to know if you guys are involved in or planning to be involved in water quality collection, and if yes, what tools you use to organize your data. Yeah, so we have actually not applicable on this one. So if you get to the second one and you aren't collecting data, you can just hit the not applicable there at the bottom. Okay, so while we're waiting for everybody to answer the poll, we've also got a question here. So this one's from Roberto, and his question is, what update type when using old data with the new template and adding new data? So if you want to add a new monitoring station. Yeah, so if you have your pre-existing data and all you're doing is you have old data and you just want to add a new monitoring station or new data for one particular site, that's where you would use this add new data feature, because all you want to do is add something in. Now, if you have old data and you wanted to update the way that data looked, there's some something maybe that we've added, and you're like, oh, this makes more sense with our past data, then you would go in, change your old data and do a replace. So if you're looking to just add new data for a new monitoring station, that would be an addition. But if you're looking to make changes to your old data, that would be a modification. Okay, so we'll end the polling here. Take a look at the results. So it looks like the vast majority of people are involved in or planning to be involved in water quality collection, which is awesome. And as I expected, the vast majority of people here are using Excel. So we do have an Excel template, and that's what we'll get into right now. And then the second one here is R. So it's another popular one as well, that we are trying, always adding new features to be compatible with R2. And our data set works really well with the ggplot template, package, if that's also what you use for a lot of your plotting. So awesome. Okay, so with that being said, if there's no more questions on the upload process, or if you think of them, you can always ask them later. We'll move on to formatting your data 101. So I'm going to open up here the DataStream upload template. So this is the upload template that you use to format your data to put it onto DataStream. One of the big things we do on this platform is we require everybody, when you upload your data, to have it all in a specified format. The reason for this is that this allows for the cross comparison of data across Canada. So everybody's kind of speaking the same language. So it's really easy to do a lot of comparisons, which is one of the big powers of open data. You don't want to have everybody on DataStream in different formats, and then half of your time, I don't know if any of you are researchers or had to do this before, but it's a lot of work when you're looking at 8 different data formats and you're trying to get them all into the same format. So we're trying to alleviate some of that work by making sure everybody's from the get-go is putting it into the same format. So our format here is a modified version of the United States Environmental Protection Agency's. Oh, I didn't shift my screen share. There we go. Awesome. Okay, so that should be popping up here in a second. But yeah, our DataStream model is based off of the United States Environmental Protection Agency's WQX, or Water Quality Exchange format. So yeah, so we've taken that and we've modified it a little bit to make it a little pared down, but it's got the same robustness. So I'm going to walk you through how this upload template works and what our format looks like as well. So the first page of this template just kind of quickly outlines the step-by-step of how to get your data into the template and save it for upload. As I mentioned, it has to be saved in the CSV file. I won't go through all these steps, but you can read this when you go to do it. Next here is this color codes. So these color codes outline in the template, which we'll see in a second, what each of the columns and headers are. You'll notice that when you input correct data, it'll go to green. If the data is required but not entered or incorrect, it'll be red. And we also have some optional fields as well. So the biggest part of this and the most important part is this allowed values tab. So what the allowed values tab is it outlines every single column, lets you know which ones are required and which ones are optional, and what format everything needs to be in or values are allowed. So for example, for your coordinates, they're required, they have to exist, and we want them to be in decimal degrees. So we make sure everybody's in the same format, and this is how it gets plotted onto the map. We also have other sections, that have these allowed value lists. So these are the values you're allowed to put in. Another big thing here is date and time. So your date has to be in this ISO format of year-month-day, as well as your time has to be in hours, minutes, seconds on a 24-hour clock. Big thing here is the double H. So you have to have kind of a zero, leading zero if you have, for example, like 9 o'clock or 8 o'clock. So we'll get into all of these columns here in a second and we'll go through an example, but just some other big parts of the allowed values are the characteristic naming. So as I mentioned, we have over 5,000 different characteristics. So it can be a lot to go through, but we have this characteristic name lookup tab. So this outlines all of the different characteristics, whether they require a sample fraction. For those of you who that's a new term, a sample fraction is which fraction of the sample was measured by the lab. So was it total or dissolved for metals? And then for nutrient data, we ask that it's whether it's filtered or not. So was it filtered in the lab, the field, or not filtered at all? So here, if you just go on Windows Control F or on a Mac Command F, you can type in kind of the characteristics you're interested in, and then it'll take you through all the different options. We also have a result unit lookup tab. So this is where you can quickly come in and see what units there are, and then as well, search for the units you're interested in. So once you've familiarized yourself with the allowed values, the glossary tab here can also give you some more information about the columns and the names of the columns and what that means, as well as some descriptions for some of the allowed values. So activity type, what does field measure versus sample routine mean? In our case, field is for anything you measure in the field with, let's say, like a YSI, and sample routine is anything that you collect as a sample and send off to the lab. So we have a lot of different options for those if you're doing duplicate or blank sampling, as well as the result sample fractions. Total, dissolved, and filtered are the main ones, but there are also some other options if your lab uses other things, as well as some of these other columns, descriptions for them. So using the allowed values, you then come in and fill in the upload template with your data. So you'll notice that some of these columns are red and some are yellow, as I mentioned earlier. The red columns are your required columns and the yellow columns are your optional columns. So using this, you're going to fill in your information. So test data set for my data set name. You'll notice when I put that in, it changes to green, which means it's good. So I could go, test 1 is my ID. Location name, let's say, is test lake 1. And then I put my coordinates. So let's say like 2 and 3. So one of the key things here with DataStream is we want unique pairings of coordinates and names. So for example, if I just named this test lake and this one test lake, I couldn't then put this as a different coordinate. So it'll tell you it's correct here, but really these should be separate names because this would be really confusing for somebody else to see, well, which site on test lake is it? So really make sure when you're putting in your data that you're including these as unique site names and unique coordinates associated with that. As well, if you're putting in a site, and let's say this one's 2 and 3, but the next one I decide to go that this one is 1.9999999, and that this one is, 1.99, let's do that. And then this one is 2.99. Really these are, you're trying to say they're basically the exact same site, but there's a very slight difference in the coordinates. These are going to show up as 2 different sites. So try to make sure that you're keeping the same coordinate and site names together. So once you've got that information, we've also have our reference system. So this is what system you use to get your coordinates. You'll notice that these ones were types, but this one has a drop down because there's an allowed value list. So I can just scroll through here, find out which one I want, click it, change color. Same with location type. So let's say for this one, it's a lake. So we go lake or pond. Water body is optional. So if I wanted to, I could say test lake because these are all on the same lake. And I've just decided that, it's 1 and 2, so that's the difference. Activity type. So as I mentioned, the 2 main ones we see are field measure observation with a portable data logger. So that's, for example, if you're going out and using something like a YSI, you would put that. The other common one we see a lot of as well is sample routine. So that's if you're getting a lab sample. So you can put those in. Next is your media name. Currently, we only have surface water, but we're looking at adding here to also include sediment data as well. So you fill that in. Start date. So if you put in your start date, say like this, and you click away, it's going to actually auto format it. So that's really helpful, and correct it to what the proper format is. But if you put something that really doesn't make any sense, it's going to just kick you up as a warning and stay red. So you've got to go in and make sure it's in the right format. Start time again, put in my time. It's going to auto correct it. But if I put something that's like total nonsense, it's going to kick back and tell me this must be in a time format, turn red, and then I've got to go in and fix that. You'll notice that these are yellow. So again, these are optional. Activity start and end date is more if you have a sample that, let's say you put it in and you leave it for a couple of days or maybe a few hours, and you take kind of an average or a composite of that. But you don't need to put it if it's like a grab sample. You know, you don't need to put 1301 and then 1302 if it's like 1 second in the water. This is for if you're doing kind of longer things. If it's just a really quick moment in time grab sample, you can leave it as just the activity start time and start date. Next, we have our depth type measure. So again, optional if you are measuring the depth at which you're taking your sample, you put that in here. The main thing is you just need to make sure that it's less than 0. We're using the surface of the water as datum, and we're assuming that you're not collecting from above it. So 4, and then we would just put in our units. Sample collection equipment name. So this is another one that these are kind of the main two that we see is probe, sensor, or water bottle. Probe is for your, YSI or any kind of field sample equipment, and water bottle is if you're grabbing that grab sample.
Sit and walk.
Yeah, so next then we have our characteristic names. So this is where you can input your characteristic names. Like I said, we have 5,000. So if you do the drop down, there's a ton in there and it's not super helpful. So what you can do is if you start typing something that you're interested in, so nitrogen, and then I hit this drop down, it's going to give me a pared down list of what exists in there. And I can see, oh, sweet, okay, this is inorganic nitrogen nitrate. That's what I'm looking for. So I click on that. You'll notice too, when I click on this one, that this column changes color. This changes color if this requires a sample fraction. So I put this in, I see, oh, okay, this needs a sample fraction. It's a nutrient, so it's in regards to filtration. So I'm gonna say that this one was filtered in the lab. Now you might not, sitting there right now, like thinking about it, know what that information is. But the lab, if you send it to, they'll be able to provide that information for you as well. The other thing here is this method speciation. So again, this is something your lab should be able to provide to you, and it just tells you what was actually measured. So for example, nitrogen, was it measured as N or was it measured as NO2, NO3? So what was kind of measured in the lab? So you can put that in, say as N, it's most common. Then we come over, we put in our result value. So this has to only be numbers, so it can't be something like big, I don't know. That's kind of a pretty vague term anyways, but it has to be a number, so you've got to put a number in here. So 5, over a little bit. Go. Okay, so when we put in the result value, oh, sorry, I'm clicking all over the place here. There we go. We put in the result value. You'll notice that this changed color. So what this result detection condition is this is the greater than or less than. So people do this in a lot of different ways. What I see most common is people will put the greater than or less than sign and then the number following it. The problem with that is then if somebody goes to graph it, there's now characters in with the numbers and it's really hard to do the graphing. So we pull those out into 2 separate categories and then allow people to do what they want to do with the result detection. So some people for result detection will take the upper value, some will say 0, some will take a median. There's lots of different methods, and this just leaves it open for the person doing the analysis to make those decisions. So if we don't put in a result value, then we have to pick a result detection condition, which in this case would be above or below, detected, not quantified. So that's if you didn't actually take a full measurement, not detected or not reported. So if we do select one of these, for example, below detection limit, we'll see that these will then now turn into red, and we have to put these in. So the result quantitation limit measure, this is whatever that measure is. So for example, if it's 2 micrograms per liter, let's say. So we would put that in, 2 micrograms per liter. And then the last one is this limit type. So this might not be something you're familiar with. Again, there's a few categories, sample fraction, method speciation, and limit type that you may want to contact your lab. They'll be able to provide this information. But this gives you your limit type. The most common here is method detection level or sample detection limit. Method detection level and lower reporting is really what we see the most. If you're unsure of which one it is and you these names don't really make a lot of sense to you, You can always go over to the glossary tab, and we explain the difference between the three methods right here, and that can hopefully help you figure out which of those makes the most sense for you. So again, that's required. So if you do have a less than, you need to let people know why. Then we also have our result value type. So most of the time you'll probably use actual, but if you are doing a calculated value, especially from your lab, you're going to want to put that in there. Or if it's a blank corrected value is another one we see often. So moving over, result status ID, this one's optional. This is used basically for people to see, if this is the final copy of your data, if it's been QA/QC'd and you approve of it, or if it's preliminary, you still have to look it over, or if there's a sample that you looked at and you've rejected it because of some reason, you can hit rejected and then put in the comments here why you rejected it. This comment section also can be used for any number of things. If you want to put maybe which staff members were out doing the sampling that day, if you have any links, if you want to put a link in there to something, or just general comments about observations you saw. If there was a big dump of soil or a bank let go, you can add that information there. Next, we have again some more information from your lab. So this is the result analytical method context and ID. So if your lab is accredited, most often they will have a method that they're basing it off of. Some common ones we see is the EPA, AFA, VMV codes. So those are all in here. So you just pick the code type, so who the publisher is of that method, and then you would just add whatever the ID is. So it could be something like that. And then if you have it, you can also add the method name here as well if you have information. It's not necessary, you can leave it blank, but if you want to add it, you can add it more information. Analysis start date and start time. So if your lab provides that information, so people can track the time it took between the time it was sampled and the time it was analyzed, you can add that here. We ask then if you do that, you just provide the time zone from UTC. And the reason for that is that we use the coordinate to predict the time zone of your sample. But oftentimes you see with these labs, they are not in the same time zone as the sampling occurred. So we just want to make sure that we're getting the times correct. Here you can add your laboratory name and as well as a laboratory sample ID. So if your lab provides that. So that's kind of a quick overview of the template. There's a lot there. If you're mostly just collecting YSI samples and you're not doing any labs, it really makes it quite a bit easier. You're mostly just putting in your coordinates and then your characteristic names and values in units. So it's a lot easier. But we also provide the ability to have some of that more robustness for people who are doing some more lab sampling. So just some other quick things on here. We have this troubleshooting tab where we're constantly adding to this for any kind of common errors we see. So here's just some common ones we have. So one is that cells are appearing with a white background. So this one happens a lot if you're copy and pasting. So if you go to another sheet and you hit Control-C and then go over here and hit Control-V, it'll take the formatting over and delete all the formatting on the upload template. So the best what I recommend is if you're copy and pasting is, you can do Control-C, but when you go to paste onto the template, you just want to make sure that you right click and then hit this here, which is values, and it'll only put the values in with none of the formatting. That'll save you a lot of time and hassle for sure. The other thing too that we see a big one is these missing sample fractions. That's a very common thing. You will often have to go to your lab to find that out. And then dates are the same times we have a lot of issues with as well. And most of those come again from Control-C, Control-V. Just make sure that you're using that right click and going to values. Sometimes though, that might not help. So you have to use this feature up here, which is text to columns. And it'll convert it to the date. On this page, there's this link here that walks you through how to change that date. The final thing with this is also the changelog. So this is just where you can track characteristic names we've added or removed, and any kind of other changes that we've made with the template over So with that, I think that is, we're getting near the end of our time. So that is all I have here for today. Let's bring us back to the PowerPoint. Yeah, so thank you guys for coming to the webinar. If you guys have any questions, please feel free to put them into the Q&A box here, and I can answer whatever you guys have today. If not, reach out to us. You can reach us at datastream@gordonfn.org, or I'll also put my personal email here in the chat if you want to reach out to me. Perfect. Yeah, so if you want to reach out, please send us an email. If you're looking to get your data onto DataStream, send us an email and we can help you get set up with that. If you're looking for training for your team, I can also do one-on-one sessions with your team to show anybody else how to use the platform. And yeah, we also can sometimes help you if you have a lot of old historical data that you want to get onto DataStream, but we know it's a lot of work. We can also provide you help with formatting your old historical data and getting that online. Additionally, we also have a new thing that we've started where if you have an existing database that's online, let us know. We can actually help you set up tying that database into DataStream and having an automated process for adding the data. So just a few other things to mention before we go into answering questions. Is we also have some more webinars coming up in our Dive into Data webinar series. Our next one is on the WQX data standards. That's hosted by the United States Environmental Protection Agency. That's coming up next month. Then in the fall, we're also hoping to add one on data formatting, so some Excel tips and tricks, as well as how you can do some quality assurance and quality control for your water quality data. If you want to find out more about those, you can go to datastream.org/webinars. And finally, we also have our office hours that we do every month, as I mentioned earlier. So the next ones are on June 3rd. This is an hour where myself, Lindsay, Will, and Eureka will be on the office hours and happy to answer any questions you have. So if it's something about the technology, if it's an issue you're running into, or if it's just a question about trying to get onto DataStream, we'll help you out there. So with that being said, I think that's kind of comes to the end of our time. I'm happy to answer any questions that anybody has. And if not, thank you guys for attending the webinar, and I look forward to helping you guys all get your data onto DataStream.